Good afternoon, welcome to ELL Plus with me and Nilesh Kumar.
And Harry Totham. In this week's programme,
the latest on Croydon tram crash. The initial accident report shows that tram was travelling at more than 3 times the speed limit.
The 15-year-old Hackney teenager who went missing on Sunday has been found safe and well in Dorset.
This year's Goldsmiths Literary Prize has gone to an author who doesn't believe in punctuation.
The bell being heard standing here, hearing ring out through the grey light of this morning, noon or night.
The Rail Accident Investigation Branch has released its initial report into last week's tram crash in Croydon. 7 people were killed and more than 50 others were injured when the tram derailed. The report says that the tram was travelling at more than 3 times the speed limit. Luke Radcliffe has the latest from Croydon.
On Wednesday the 16th of November, the Rail Accident and Investigations Branch released some of its initial findings in the investigation into last week's fatal tram accident. In the report, they state that the tram was travelling at over 3 times the speed limit at the time of the crash. Though they say that investigators did find evidence that brakes were applied, the tram was travelling at 43.5 miles per hour when the speed limit should have been 12 miles per hour. They found no evidence of any defects or obstructions on the track, and there was no evidence of a malfunction to the braking system. In a statement released by the RAIB, they say that they're keen to point out that they're not a prosecuting body and that the purpose of this report is simply to issue safety guidance and to ensure that nothing like this happens again. The criminal investigation will be left to British Transport Police. This report is part of a wider investigation into the causes of last week's accident, and the RAIB say that the full investigation could take up to a year. Luke Radcliffe, Croydon, ELL+.
The 15-year-old boy who went missing from his Hackney home at the weekend has been found safe in Dorset. 8 other people who disappeared in East London in the same period are still missing. Eugenia Dolina has been looking at the alarming figures of missing person cases.
The case of the missing teenager from Hackney has been successfully resolved. 15-year-old Luca Goldman Hudson was found safe and alive just outside Weymouth, near the Dorset coast. However, this seems to be the only happy ending amongst the latest cases of missing people in East London. Another 15-year-old Jaden Parkin from Tower Hamlets had walked out of his house just a few days before and hasn't been seen since. In this area only, 3 people have been reported missing during the last 4 weeks. All of them were last seen in Tower Hamlets borough, and since then the police has been investigating their disappearance. All of their details can be found on missingpeople.org.uk. Elsewhere in Croydon and Hackney, there have been 5 more disappearances in the same period. Most of the missing seem to come from ethnic minority backgrounds, including a 36-year-old Sandeep Rakra that has been actively sought for more than a week. There are a number of other cases that haven't been publicized. Anyone with any information about these disappearances is asked to contact the police. Eugenia Dolina, East London Lines.
A DIY device that monitors air pollution has been designed by a Goldsmiths professor who has set up a local project in Deptford and New Cross. Local residents are being encouraged to get involved, and Joki Coleman brings us this report.
Deptford's air pollution is being monitored using low-tech pollution sensing technology known as dust boxes. The devices was developed by Citizen Sense Project. Locals can connect their mobile phones to dust boxes, which feeds into online central monitoring.
Air pollution is a big problem across London, definitely. And in Deptford, I would say it's definitely above average in terms of the exceedances of the official air quality thresholds that are set by the European Commission.
One crane, she says, produces the same amount of pollution as more than a dozen city buses. It's not just construction that's the problem. A lack of public transport means there is an increased amount of traffic. Lorries, HGVs, and diesel cars add to the pollution count.
We're working in a participatory way to develop technologies, as we have here in the dust box, and look at how to collect data, how to analyze that data, and potentially do things with that data in relation to policy and more.
Local people can rent the dust boxes from the Deptford Lounge. It is free and there are plenty of devices in stock. Joki Coleman, Lewisham, ELL+.
And now with the rest of the day's news, here is Jane Chow.
Thank you, Annalesh. Croydon Council has launched a crowdfunding campaign to help support victims, families and survivors of last week's tram crash. More than £15,000 has already been donated, which the council hopes will provide long-term emotional and financial support to those affected. Transport for London has offered to pay the funeral costs of the victims. TfL has pledged to do everything it can to help the families. 7 people lost their lives and more than 50 people were hurt, some sustaining life-changing injuries. 3 of victims are still in hospital. Donations can be made online by visiting the Just Giving website. In New Cross, Lewisham Council is planning to build around 250 homes and a doctor's surgery in the area, called Besson Street Triangle. But residents and housing campaigners are fiercely opposed. A local activist group called A Better Besson Street claimed that Lewisham Council was not listening to the needs of the residents. One said that people in the area couldn't afford the homes and did not want to be the next shortage. Councillor Damien Egan said that the council has ruled out the community-led development initiatives, but the borough plans to build up to 2,000 new homes by 2018. Shoreditch will be the location this weekend for the biggest celebration of food and drink in the UK. Foodies Festival serves up to 3-day celebration to get everyone in the Christmas mood. Candice Brown, the winner of this year's Great British Bake Off, will perform a live cooking demonstration at Old Truman Brewery in East London. Tickets are available at foodiesfestival.com. Back to you.
Thanks, Jane. Strikes continue to affect passengers travelling with Southern Railways. Southern Railways have just announced that passengers should expect strikes over the Christmas and New Year period. Affected dates include weekdays in November and the busy weekend before Christmas, as well as the weekend around New Year's Day.
Now, have you ever run out of breath when reading a long sentence? Well, this year's winner of the Goldsmiths Prize might challenge you. Solar Bones by the Irish writer Mike McCormack is a 200-page novel written in just one sentence. Baffled? Well, this is what it sounds like.
The bell as, hearing the bell as standing here, the bell being heard standing here, hearing ring out through the grey light of this morning, noon, or night. God knows, this grey day standing here and listening to this bell in the middle of the day bell, the Angelus bell in the middle of the day, ringing out through the great light to hear, standing in the kitchen hearing this bell, snag my heart and draw the whole world into being here, pale and breathless after coming a long way to stand in this kitchen, confused, no doubt about that, but hearing the bell from the village church a mile away as the crow flies across the street from the Garda station, beneath the giant sycamore trees which tower over it and in which a colony of rooks have made their nests, so many and so noisy that sometimes in spring when they are nesting, their clamor fills the church, and exhausted now, so quickly that sprint to the church and the bell, yes, they are the real thing, the real bells. Not a transmission or a broadcast, because there's no mistaking the full depth and resonance of the sound carried towards me across the length and breadth of this day, and which, even at this distance, reverberates in my chest.
Earlier, I spoke to author and Goldsmiths professor Blake Morrison, who was chair of the judging panel. I began by asking him about the book and why it stood out to him and the other judges.
It stood out from a very strong shortlist, which includes some quite established novelists like Rachel Cusk and Emma McBride and Deborah Levy. It stood out, I think, because it's a very unusual novel about an engineer, a day in a life, or a few hours in the life of this man, and yet it touches on so many things: family, work, art, politics, and the environment. And of course what struck a lot of people and been made something of in the tabloids is that there isn't a full stop in it. It's one long flowing sentence, and somehow you barely notice that after a while because it has this beautiful rhythm that carries you all the way through.
Now, the author Mike McCormack is the third Irish winner of the award since its launch in 2013. Any coincidence there at all?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Something about the Irish. I think they have this tradition of innovation and experiment that comes from James Joyce and Samuel Beckett and Flann O'Brien, and that gives them a kind of confidence to play and to try things out that maybe a lot of British writers don't have. And on top of that, there's a very flourishing Irish small press, small publishers scene where, quite generously funded in some cases by the Irish Arts Council, which looks after literature better than our Arts Council does. And so you've actually got editors who are looking for challenging new work. And all that is, I think, the reason why the Irish writers have come to prominence in this way.
What do you think that the Goldsmiths Prize adds to the world of literary fiction?
Well, I think it really has added something, because a while ago there were a lot of complaints that British fiction was kind of stuck in a rut, and that new things, that experimental things were not finding a way out. Agents were saying, no one will read this. Editors were saying, no one will read this. And what we found is there is this big receptive audience, so that we've defined a particular area that needed looking after, and we found a niche, and that's why in a very short time it's become a very well established prize.
Goldsmiths Prize is linked to the Writers' Centre. Could you perhaps expand on that connection at all?
Yeah, well, when I came here a few years ago, but one of my more recent things is to become director of the Writers' Centre. So we're trying to bring together a lot of the different writing that goes on throughout Goldsmiths and all the different departments, but particularly we put on weekly events, so that next week, for instance, we have Edmund Gordon, who's written a biography of the novelist Angela Carter, the first full biography. He's talking 5 o'clock next Wednesday, and then the following week at the same time we've got Adam Mars-Jones, who teaches here at Goldsmiths, talking about representations of disability in film and literature. So the Writers' Centre is, putting on events more than anything else, I guess, but it's a celebration of writing at Goldsmiths.
Blake, thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for your time. Cheers.
Thank you.
Coming up on ELL Plus News, Anna will have the latest sports news.
Stay with us. Welcome back. Later in the programme we visit the first Migration Film Festival in London, and we report on International Men's Day.
But first, according to the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, more children are now experiencing online bullying. This week is Anti-Bullying Week. Elijah Kong went to Shoreditch to speak to a member of Childline who helps victims of cyber abuse.
The internet, is it your friend or foe? Online bullying has increased by 88% over the last 5 years concerning children and young people. Can we really stop this from happening?
It's quite easy to access a computer or to access a laptop. So many young Londoners have smartphones. So yeah, they are, our young people in London are certainly at enormous risk from cyberbullying, on a daily basis. Yeah.
The NSPCC has come up with an animated campaign video.
It disappears in a few seconds. When Katie saw it, she thought it was very funny. So she screen grabbed the picture and sent it to her friends. And they sent it to theirs. And the next day at school...
According to the NSPCC, bullying has been in the top 5 main concerns since 1985 up to
looking
today.
at the technology and the support that they can actually have to protect themselves, and we can also educate and teach young people how to look after themselves online, how to use their privacy settings, how to use reporting on all these different sites. It's mainly social media and gaming sites is where most of the bullying seems to be happening.
Hello, through to Childline.
The NSPCC is providing online support, counselling, and also urges people to use their power to help stop bullying. Elijah Kong, Shoreditch, ELL+.
This Saturday marks International Men's Day. This year the theme is preventing male suicide. Statistics for London show that men who live in inner London are at more of a risk than those in outer boroughs. Analesh Kumar reports.
Jonathan runs a coffee shop in Greenwich. He has been in this business for 10 years. But due to the growing competition in London, managing a coffee stall is tough. And as a man, he's facing immense pressure these days.
There are so many worries in the world, political, financial, and it's not just local worries, worried about things that are going on in the world internationally, you know, the elections in America, and then you've got social media and news like we've never had information before, and it's constantly in your face.
He's not alone in facing such problems, which is why this year, on November 19th, International Men's Day, will have a special focus on male mental health.
It's becoming more stressful, and I think probably men are lost in a little bit of a kind of in a no man's land of what they're supposed to be.
According to the Office for National Statistics, Tower Hamlets has one of the highest suicide rates in London. In 2014, the last year when the figures were compiled, there were 23 suicides in the area. There were more suicides in inner London than in suburbs. Kingston had 4 suicides in 2014, compared to 17 in Westminster.
I think it's really important that we encourage men to talk more about their problems. And I've got a little boy at the moment, and I think about it a lot. And I think about how I'm bringing him up to be someone that's not a tough man. You know, he doesn't need to be a tough man, he doesn't need to bury his problems. And I want him to be sensitive, and I want him to play with dolls, and I want him to explore his nurturing side. And I think that's really important.
Plenty of men contribute to bringing up children. But for some men and women, the work-life balance is a struggle.
Dealing with the dilemma of life could be an uphill task, but someone rightly said, conquering negativity is the beginning of life.
And in the game of life, for those with a positive attitude, it will always be their day. It will be Men's Day. And now to Anaifa with the local sports news.
Thank you. Former Crystal Palace footballer Liam McKenzie, who became a boxer, now says he may quit boxing after losing the first fight of his career. McKenzie says he's no longer a young man. Hackney's unbeaten lightweight boxer Ahara Davis faces a key test next Saturday. Eddie Hearn, the English boxing promoter, says Davis is in at the deep end in his challenge for the WBS Silver Super Lightweight title against champion Andreas Scarpa. The match is set to take place at the SSE Arena at Wembley. Finally, football last Saturday, Croydon faced Andover Town. Croydon's Cravario was given a yellow card and was eventually sent off. In the second half, Javier Santafe Vivo scored the first goal for Andover. But Croydon fought back. Chin scored at 78 minutes, followed by another goal from Duakesi 10 minutes later. The final score, 2-1 to Croydon. That's all from sports. Back to you, Anilesh.
Thank you. The first London Migration Film Festival was held over the weekend in Deptford. Migrants from around the world made films to convey their reasons for leaving their countries. Vicky Rebel reports.
A chance to connect, discuss and explore. The London Migration Film Festival, the first festival of its kind, launched this weekend in several venues around South East London.
I think the real aim of this festival is to show the nuance of the migration experience and the humanity behind it.
The festival offered audiences the opportunity to witness the plight of those forced to flee their homes to seek a better life. Film screenings, workshops, discussion panels and music were among the events open to the public as part of the festival's 3-day programme.
Well, I was so surprised to hear yesterday that this is the first London Migration Film Festival ever, focusing on these themes. So, I mean, that says a lot. Maybe these people haven't really thought to do something like this. So, I mean, this, the whole sort of 3 days has been like, full of like different programs and films and activities. And the turnout has been amazing.
But a festival like this is important in order to spread awareness and in order to create connection between communities.
It's always been important to kind of see the diversity, the other view, so to speak, and not just be fed by what the media is telling you. I'm not necessarily saying it's not true all the time, but it's not true all the time.
With sellout weekend screenings and workshops, it's clear the topic of migration has never been more current.
That's it for now. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next week.